Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me for my my 10-minute spiel. So first of all, who am I? I thought that would be a good place to start. So I'm a GP. I've been a GP for many years up on Exmoor, which I've absolutely loved, but I left there a year ago and moved to work for the two trusts, Somerset Partnership and Taunton and Somerset Trust, so Musgrove Park Hospital, in the role with the very long, cumbersome title, which I won't take time out to articulate. So I thought it might be helpful just to start and have a think about those two trusts and what they are doing in terms of trying to work with primary care in a slightly different and perhaps more constructive way. So most of you, or some of you, will be aware that the two trusts are planning to merge, and actually that's just now got the green light last week that they are able to carry on with that process and move to a formal merger, which will be in September next year, all being well. So what does that really mean for them working with primary care and for all of you out there in Somerset? So if we start with Somerset Partnership, well, that provides community and mental health services for all 66 practices across the county. We then come down a little bit more and we have a subset within that of those practices, probably heading up towards 40, who might use, to a degree, the acute services in Taunton. And then we come down even smaller and we have got the fact that we now run 2 and about to be 3, all going well, in January, GP practices. And I think when Jill mentioned to me about coming to speak today, that was the key focus you were perhaps thinking I'd talk about. But I just feel that I'm slightly going off piste, so apologies for that. So I just wanted really to be clear that although we operate and run those 2 or 3 practices, our business really is working across the whole of the county and with all of you. So what have they been trying to do? Well, if there was a paper back by the King's Fund in 2015 about acute trusts trying to become more integrated and particularly working with primary care. And one of the key things was about, let's try and get some primary care representation in a bit closer to people making decisions in those organisations. And at that time there was a chief executive in Musgrove Park Hospital who was a GP. And they then appointed me as a voice really who could sit on some of their organisations and their groups and say, no, that won't work, or have you thought about, or how could we do that in a different way? We have a different chief executive now in Peter Lewis, but I would say that he is somebody who really supports primary care. He understands the importance of it. He also understands that the funding, there is a discrepancy of funding, and we need to shift that in a way and try to move services and funding following that out into the community and out into practices. So we've now grown and we've developed a small primary care team now within the trusts, and this is the only slide I have. I have no portraits or any great quotes, I'm sorry about that, but I do have this. And so I've been joined by Becca, and I've seen Becca over there, so there she is, who you will also know. She's a GP, and also Mandy Stewart, who is a practice manager, who helping us to develop some of this primary care work, which is great. And what I would see is that we act as both a primary care representation for us, for you, so please let us know how you would like us to do that, but also we can potentially be that link point. So when you are thinking about, as Michael was describing, about how as groups of practices you can integrate, use us as a way in, use us to help point you in the right direction. That's what we're there for, and hopefully we can try and help and facilitate that. Within the trust, they've got a very good improvement department, quality improvement department, and made a strategic sort of decision a couple of years ago that all their development work would go through quality improvement methodology, and then they set up several groups to tackle various areas. And we have one now which is called a primary care. Well, it's called the Primary Care Improvement Group, which is just an awful name, and we are about to rename it tomorrow. But basically, it's a team which does include GPs. And if anybody would wish to be involved in that, then please do let me know. We'd be delighted to have more primary care representation, and are thinking about how we can bring some of those meetings out into areas to try to encourage that. But the idea with it is a team that we can identify projects and really ask our improvement team to help us measure the benefits and the processes, and so we can really try to get some good information and drive projects forward. They're looking at particularly at person-centred care, bringing services further out into the community, looking at removing those clunky pathways, but is what I call them, and also how we can try to build relationships and communication, from which everything else will follow, I'm sure of that. So some projects have been developed and are ongoing. There is, some of you will probably be aware that we are just about to restart the pink pages that I think for those who are my age will remember with delight, which is really a directory of information of all the services within the trusts. And the flip side of that is we're developing purple pages for the teams in the hospitals and in the trust to be able to have the information for you of your services in practices. It's fledgling, it's going to be basic at the beginning, but potentially this is an area where we can start to put information up, links to a YouTube clip for what it's like for your patient to have an MRI scan, how's that going to sound. We could have the information up about services in neighbourhood teams so we can really start to work together. So we've got that. Two federation areas, and it's about to be rolled out, are getting, and this, I know this happens in South Somerset already, but it hasn't happened in the practices primarily supplied by Taunton. It's about to get the information of your admissions coming in. There've been those admissions of your patients in that previous 24 hours. So if you have a patient who you have spent a lot of time doing a complicated TEP form for, which somehow gets overridden overnight, there may be something that's really important that you feel that you want to communicate. We know that IT should have a solution for this. It doesn't at the moment. We've got to find ways around it. We have a frequent user project in the emergency department. If there's somebody who comes to your practice a lot, they come to the emergency department also a lot, flag them to us, and we can perhaps bring them up to raise them up in being looked at and a care plan developed with you about how we can work together, and that would include SWAST as well for those patients. Top on the list at the moment are MAR charts. What can we do about that? Can we try and reduce having to fill those in? What can we do about those outpatient letters and those scripts? And actually, although some of this is Taunton hospital based, I don't think Catherine Patrick's here, is she today? Who's the director of primary care at Yeovil? We link up quite often, and if something is going on that we think is a good idea in one place, we'll work hard to try to make sure we tie those up together so it works for everybody across the county. Services that we potentially have or could provide that might be helpful for you as you start to look at different ways of working. One is the quality improvement work. So I know there has been quite a lot of support already through SPQS, and there have been training programs. It's a great team that we do, and a good service that we have available, and I know for sure that the improvement team will be interested in new ways of working, projects going on, in helping you to work out what you need to measure, what your benefits could be, and how you could run those in terms of improvement methodology. They've got some quite good training programs that they're just developing as well, which we hope to be able to offer for people to come to if they would wish to. Musculoskeletal practitioners, many practices have them as first line contacts these days, and contact us if that's something you would like. These musculoskeletal practitioners will be part of the big group of practitioners in the county. So we're hopefully not squeezing one area at the expense of another. And the same goes for CPNs. We're just starting band 6 CPNs as first line contact points of view. I know Ian Wire has been doing this down in Melbourne Port and has found that actually they may not save secondary care referrals, but they do save GP work time. And that's something we're going to be introducing into our practices very shortly. So finally, coming back to those 2 practices, we have 2 practices that we run at the moment, as I say, with a 3rd one coming on board in January. We've got a couple of discussions, a few discussions going on with a couple of others. And I suppose the big question is why are we doing this? And I would just say that this is very much, I think, about how can we keep primary care going? How can we not just keep it hanging on, but actually make it healthy? And I think those reasons are exactly the same as the reasons I'm sure that Burge is going to be expanding on in his next session. So we're not hunting for practices. Personally, I think around about a group of 5 would be helpful for us. And the reasons for that is we can get a little bit of a sense of economy of scale. But also one of the things that does also allow us to do is use that group of practice as a bit of a test bed. You know, we can take a risk with looking at a new service and say, let's try it, let's measure to see whether we can get those benefits. It's use those other support services we've got to help us identify those. If that works, we can then go back to Michael and his team and say, look, we've got some good evidence here. This might be something that other teams, other neighbourhoods might benefit from. I must be 10 minutes, I think. So on that note, I'll hand over to Burge. Thank you very much.